Hey guys, welcome to the Courage Collective. So I've decided that I'm going to be doing like a weekly segment just kind of on my own, just bringing up, you know, various subjects surrounding DV and abuse. This week, what I wanted to talk about is, I thought this is a very good place to start, identifying domestic violence. Just to be completely 100% clear before I even begin, everything that I'm about to say is informational. It is statistically based. This is nothing I'm stating is a matter of my own personal opinion. I'm hoping that by presenting you guys with black and white facts that maybe I can help even just one person see the pattern of abuse and start to prepare themselves to take the next steps. So, like I said, all of this information I'm reading directly off of line. So I thought we would start off with domestic violence defined. I think that there is a lot of misconceptions surrounding domestic violence. I think the biggest misconception is that it has to be physical to be considered abuse or domestic violence. So if you just a quick definition, domestic violence is the mistreatment of one family member or intimate partner by another. The abuse can be physical, sexual, verbal, emotional, and psychological. It goes on to say most often, but not always, the persons who abuse are men. Most often, but not always, the victim of abuse are women and children, but we'll discuss statistics later. So I wanted to go over the types of domestic violence. Just again, I think that there's such a huge misconception around what domestic violence or abuse actually is. So let's break it down by definition. Let's break it down. So first, I think the most obvious type of domestic abuse is physical violence. That's what you first think of when you hear abuse or DD. And that obviously it includes things like hitting, slapping, spitting, pushing. But there's also other forms of physical abuse that I think that we think a little bit less about. Something that I've been subjected to is withholding physical needs. So I've dealt with sleep deprivation. I've gone from 24 to 72 hours without sleeping as an intentional tactic, refusing to release necessities. I've had somebody withhold my medication, locking a victim in the house or out of the house, withholding help when a victim is sick or injured. So preventing you from being able to call 911 or being able to call for help. Sexual abuse, some more statistics. About 1.5 million women experience rape by a partner each year. Now, I think that that's something really important to touch on, by a partner, because unfortunately, that's something that a lot of women I'm noticing believe is impossible, that you cannot be sexually assaulted by your partner. It just can't happen. My motto is, if it's not enthusiastic consent, it's not consent. 1 in 4 women have experienced sexual abuse, and 1 in 26 men admit to sexually abusing a woman or attempting to sexually abuse a woman. 1 in 26 men admit to that. So makes you kind of wonder how many don't admit to it. Emotional abuse. There's many different types of emotional abuse. I think the biggest thing is gaslighting. So a quick Google search defines gaslighting as a form of psychological manipulation where someone intentionally distorts the truth to make another person distort. A quick Google search defines gaslighting as a form of psychological manipulation where someone intentionally distorts the truth to make another person doubt their own memories, perceptions, or sanity. The ultimate goal is to gain control by making the victim dependent on the abuser's version of reality. The Merriam-Webster definition states that gaslighting is psychological manipulation that causes a victim. Merriam-Webster defines gaslighting as a psychological manipulation that causes a victim to question their own reality or the act of grossly misleading someone for their advantage. It is often used to cause confusion and foster dependency on the manipulator. Foster dependency on the manipulator. You're now relying on this person's version of reality because they have you so convinced that what you recall is not what happened, or it didn't happen that way. It happened this way, or I didn't say this, I said that. So you're questioning yourself about everything, about absolutely everything. So now you become reliant on this person to basically provide reality for you. Just a few different examples of emotional abuse. indirect threats, invalidating the victim's feelings, or blaming you for having a reaction to something that they did. I'm noticing a lot that men are getting hip to healing language and they're starting to use it as a weapon. Regular pointless criticism and name calling, creating chaos when it's unnecessary, emotionally blackmailing the victim, stonewalling. I think that that is probably one of the things that bothers me the absolute most when it comes to communication with a partner is being stonewalled. I am the kind of person I need to communicate. I do not sweep things under the rug. We need to talk about this. So to be ignored, literally to be ignored for hours, days, however long, it is a manipulation tactic. It's a tactic to keep you on your toes, to keep you worrying, keep you wondering. Another one that I personally dealt with is isolation. Abusers will typically try to isolate you away from your family and friends and people that you know that love and support you and have your best interests at heart. And they'll use a lot of excuses like, this is our private business. Nobody needs to hear our dirty laundry, things like that. Something else that I have experienced a significant amount of is threatening self harm in order to manipulate the victim. So, my current husband, I literally cannot even count how many times I have woken up in the middle of the night to him being completely gone because he got mad about something while I was asleep. And I'm waking up to just novels and novels and novels and novels of suicide letters. And I'm going to drive somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Nobody's ever going to be able to find me. I'm going to kill myself. And it's going to all be your fault. And then attacking their partner for trying to self improve. So you see this a lot with like women who are trying to lose weight. You'll have very critical partners or women who are trying to elevate their careers, very, very critical partners. Financial abuse. So you have a partner who's controlling all of your money or your access to funds, forging signatures. I've had people open lines of credit in my, a person open lines of credit in my name. Another huge thing is denying access for a victim to get to work, whether that be taking their keys, fucking with their car, calling into their job and saying they're not coming in, anything of that nature is financial abuse. Isolation. I feel like we kind of already talked about that a little bit. Stalking and harassment. So a big one is obviously watching your victim from a distance, them not being aware of you being observing them. For example, I literally went out to dinner with a friend of mine and my ex texted me in the a few hours later and literally telling me exactly what I wore to dinner that night. Breaking into your home. Obviously, that's illegal. Also, stalking and harassment, reading their mail, hacking their accounts, following you through your daily activities, or if you have a restraining order, violating it. So, just to kind of go into more statistics again, and I'm not doing this to bore you guys, I'm doing this because I hope that hearing facts and data will maybe make something click for some of you and realize that this is not just in your head. So, intimate partner violence. So, prevalence 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men in the US will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. On average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the US. 1 in 3 teens experience dating violence each year, though only 33% who experience it ever tell anybody. I want to kind of pause on that. Only 33% who experience it ever tell anybody. That is my entire message. The shit needs to be talked about. I cannot express how important it is for these things to come out in the open and these discussions to be had and this information to be shared. It was 10 years past before I ever told a soul that I had been sexually abused. There's a lot of shame that comes with being abused, a lot of embarrassment, I think, too. Nobody wants to admit that the person that they love and the person that they chose is the one who's harming them. It's embarrassing. LGBTQ. So, transgender and bisexual individuals experience some of the highest rates of intimate partner violence, with over half of respondents in to the US Transgender Survey reporting coercive control or physical harm. Child abuse and neglect. Every year, over 530,000 children in the US are identified as victims of abuse or neglect. Sorry, this one's a little bit hard for me. Crime, homicide statistics and risks. Intimate partner violence accounts for roughly 15% of all violent crimes. The presence of a firearm in a domestic violence situation increases the risk of homicide by 500%. Now, I want to talk particularly about strangulation because I feel like this is its own subject of physical abuse. There is something so insidious and intentional about strangulation. It is such an intimate experience to have with the person, to have your hands around their neck, squeezing the life from them and literally watching them fade. So, some more information. Survivors who have been strangled by an intimate partner are 750% more likely to be killed by that same partner. Nearly half of all attempted and completed domestic violence homicides involve a prior history of a non fatal strangulation. What that means is when nobody just does this shit once, nobody just puts their hands on you once, nobody strangles you just once. That's just going to keep happening and it's going to escalate. And if you don't get out, it's going to end your life. That was an opinion. That was not factually based. Prevalence. So estimate indicate that between 68 and 80% of women in high risk abusive relationships experience at least one episode of near fatal strangulation. Gender discrepancy. While victims of all genders can be affected, the vast majority of perpetrators, over 90% of them, are male, and the vast majority of victims are female. So, physical tolls, obviously, you're going to deal with the loss of consciousness. Up to 38% of domestic violence survivors report losing consciousness during a strangulation assault. Unconsciousness can occur within mere seconds. Keep in mind, the longer that your brain loses oxygen, obviously, the more damage is done. And eventually, if they don't stop, you will die. Method of assault. Nearly 97% of these assaults are committed manually using hands rather than with a weapon or ligature. So, like a necklace or a scarf. Hidden damage. In about 50% of strangulation cases, there are no visible external injuries. However, internal damage can lead to traumatic brain injuries, neurological defects, delayed respiratory failure, and stroke. Strangulation is very fucking serious. When your brain loses oxygen, it is very fucking serious. You could be strangled and days later have a stroke. Go to the hospital, file a police report. I know it's hard. I have been there. I have been sitting in an emergency room, waiting room, crying to myself because I'm alone and I'm sitting there waiting to be seen for a broken leg and a head injury from my husband who attacked me the night before and then disappeared. Brain trauma truly can be a silent killer. So that's the end of my spiel on stats and whatnot. Like I said, my goal with this was definitely not to bore you guys with numbers and information. It was to kind of paint a more data-based picture of what this shit really is. Call a spade a spade. Abuse is abuse. Domestic violence is domestic violence. There's no excusing it away. There is no, it only happened the one time. Oh, he said he would never do it again. Nobody ever crosses that line and does not cross it again. Nobody ever just does this shit once. Nobody will ever call you out of your name once. Nobody will ever spit in your face once. Nobody will ever violate your privacy once. Nobody will ever put their hands on you once. That shit escalates. It continues to get worse. And you continue to get more and more and more and more and more locked in to the relationship and the situation itself. If you need help escaping, there are so many community resources. If you reach out to me directly, I am more than happy to look into resources and your local community. That is a big part of what locally, obviously, I can only work within my state, but that's a big part of what my job is as a peer recovery supporter is to help people locate resources that they need. I know that this can feel very embarrassing and very nerve wracking to come forward about and talk about. And the embarrassment that you feel, it's valid. I'm not going to invalidate it, but you should not be the one feeling embarrassed. You shouldn't be the one who embarrassed because you believed a facade that somebody put on and characteristics and behaviors that they presented at first that they ended up not being able to maintain in the long run. That is not your fault. It's not your fault for trusting what somebody showed you them to be. The person who should be embarrassed, the person who should feel shame is the person who did this to you. The person who should feel shame is the person who did this to you. So on that note, that's this week's segment. Thank you guys for joining me. As always, shoot me a DM or send me an email. All of my contact information, as long as my YouTube channel is in my bio. And I hope to get some more messages. We've got some more interviews scheduled I'm very excited about. Things are just a little bit hectic right now with my schedule, what's going on with my situation. And then, of course, also, you know, dealing with somebody else's schedule. But continue to stay tuned. I am so excited to go on this journey with you guys. Talk to you soon.